Viewer discretion is advised. When I was in elementary school, one of the boys a few grades ahead of me was Kyle Doobie. I was 2 or 3 grades below him, so I didn't have much interaction with him outside of recess. He often made it a point to stand right behind me and yank on my pigtails as hard as he could, under the pretense that I was a horse and he was riding me. He also used to bring knives to school and would sometimes threaten some of his classmates with them when they did something to make him angry. And at one point he actually pulled a knife on a young girl. It was after school behind one of the buildings. Why nothing was officially ever done about it, I couldn't tell you. But my school, being very small, was not known for being on top of the disciplinary side of things. There was just something about Kyle, the hair pulling, and just the general way he acted, that ultimately made me feel uncomfortable whenever he was around. I wasn't alone in this regard. Former classmates have also expressed feeling uneasy in his presence. To my relief, he ended up moving away, and none of us heard anything about him for a number of years. Until one day he showed up on the local news, having been arrested for the murder of Nicole Cable. He had made a fake Facebook profile, lured her out of her house, kidnapped her, and left her in the back of his dad's pickup truck. His intention was to pretend to find her so that he would be labeled a hero. When he found out that she was dead, he dumped her body in the woods and covered it with sticks and leaves. They found her about a week later. I was in school when I found out, and I had to go to the nurse's office because I felt so sick. It's very disconcerting to know that a murderer used to yank on my hair. As of writing this, he is going on trial in the next couple of days, which is what prompted me to share this experience.
This 20-year-old man from Maine showed up in a courtroom this week after a bizarre plot to kidnap his 15-year-old crush and then miraculously come to her rescue. Police say Kyle Doobie created a fake Facebook page to lure Nicole Cable out of her home and then get her to the end of her driveway. They say that that's where he was lying in wait, wearing a ski mask, that he allegedly grabbed her, duct taped her face, and then threw her into the back of his dad's pickup truck. The last time her mom saw her was when she was heading out the door.
I grew up in Detroit, Michigan. I attended the Dorothy Fisher Magnet Middle School. It was there that I met Patrick Selapak, and we became very good friends. He was smart, funny, charming, good-looking, and kind-hearted, or so I thought. We were friends until I moved out of the city of Detroit. I lost touch with Patrick when I was about 16, maybe 15 years old. I always wondered what happened to him, and I thought of him often over the years. In February of 2006, I heard about the murder of Melissa Barrels and her husband Scott. They only lived a few miles down the road from me. Melissa was 10 weeks pregnant. Patrick befriended Melissa after shopping at the grocery store that she worked at. He somehow convinced Melissa to allow him and his girlfriend Samantha to come and hang out with her for a while. He ended up hitting Melissa in the head with a gun. As she fell to the ground, he proceeded to strangle her with a belt. He convinced his girlfriend to help him because it was taking too long for her to die. During this, Melissa's husband came home. He was ambushed and hit in the head with a gun, and then locked in the bathroom while Pat and his girlfriend finished off Melissa. When she was dead, they turned their attention to Scott. Samantha went to CVS to get duct tape, syringes, and a few other things. They tried injecting bleach into Scott to kill him, but that didn't work. Scott was tortured for about 4 hours before he finally succumbed to his injuries. Patrick and Samantha moved the bodies to a back room. They wrapped them up in plastic and covered them with tarp before they left. Melissa's parents called the police to do a welfare check when she didn't show up for work. The police found the bodies in the tarp in the same room that they were decorating for the baby. Patrick and Samantha fled the Barrels' house in their car. They had also taken the couple's personal documents to assume their identities. Somehow, Pat and Samantha ended up in Flint, Michigan. They met someone at a nightclub who offered them a place to stay. They stayed with him for about 3 weeks before the man saw the news reports and tried to convince Patrick to turn himself in. The man walked outside, saying that he was going to call the police himself, and that's when Patrick shot the man in the back. They then wrapped this man's body up the same way they did with Scott and Melissa, and placed it in the back of the man's pickup truck. The next day, a friend of Samantha's called her and asked if she could give her a ride to a job interview. Samantha agreed. Before they showed up at the girl's house, she saw on TV that they were both wanted for murder. In a risky move, she still allowed them to pick her up for the interview. They drove the girl to the hotel where the interview was. She asked them to wait there for her, and said that it wouldn't take long. As soon as she got inside the hotel, she called the police. When the police arrived, they restrained Patrick and Samantha and found the body in the bed of the pickup truck they were driving. They both were sentenced to life in prison without the possibility of parole. Patrick and Samantha were featured on the Investigation Discovery Channel in the show Wicked Attraction. The title of the episode is Single White Male, which aired in 2009. If anyone would like to verify this story, there are plenty of links on Google.
He knew he was going to prison for the rest of his life, and he made out like I don't even want to be bothered. I'm guilty.
He was sentenced to life in prison without the possibility of parole.
I am remorseful for what I've done. There's a fine line to show emotion when you go through what I go through, sitting in this custody.
I lived in Menifee, California for over 3 years. During my time there, I attended the local high school, and let me just say, a lot of crazy stuff went down while I was there. One time, the librarian showed up at the school really early in the morning and shot herself in her car. The body was discovered during second period. The creepiest part was that I passed by that car while I was on my way to school that morning, and I didn't even notice. Another time, an undercover cop posing as a student was able to identify kids selling narcotics, and a huge drug bust ensued shortly after. Strangely enough, on that same day, while I was on my way to school, a guy I knew offered to sell me weed, to which I wisely declined. Later on, I saw that same guy arrested and escorted out of the classroom. This event closely mirrored the movie 21 Jump Street. However, there was one event that shook the entire community, and that was the disappearance and death of Terry Dwayne Smith Jr. The tragedy happened in the summer of 2013. I did not know who the boy was, but I did know his older brother Skylar. I knew him from my first period English class. I didn't interact with him all that much, even though he sat near me, but the times that I did talk to him, he seemed friendly enough. He came off as a bit odd, but I didn't think much of it at the time. Something of note that did happen earlier on in the school year was a confrontation Skylar had with another student. Apparently the guy said something very offensive to Skylar, which really pissed him off. A fight broke out, and the student ended up getting a tooth knocked out. At the time, it was pretty funny to everyone, but this incident highlighted Skylar's violent nature. I had spent most of that summer hanging out with my trio of friends. One day, I was in my room doing nothing of interest, so I decided to go on Facebook. While on there, Skylar posted something that appeared on my news feed. He had stated that his younger brother had gone missing, and was letting his friends know to be on the lookout for him. I thought it was pretty unfortunate, but a part of me thought that Terry would eventually show up. It was either on that same day or the next. I was watching the news, and the number one topic was the disappearance of Terry. Apparently the situation was more severe than I initially thought. A community group was put together to search for the boy. As the days went on, more and more people got together to search for young Terry. I believe that Skylar made a few more posts about it on Facebook, but I don't remember exactly. However, I do remember him becoming a suspect, as he was the last person to see Terry alive. He was eventually taken into custody. I remember a lot of his friends being in denial and disbelief. They didn't think that he would have ever hurt Terry. I personally didn't know Skylar that well to make a judgment call. While in custody, Skylar changed his story several times about the last time he saw his younger brother. He told the police that they were home alone when Skylar decided that he wanted to get out of the house and hang out with some of his friends. Terry apparently followed him part of the way there, before Skylar told him that he couldn't tag along and told him to go back home. This set up the theory that Terry had been abducted on his way back home. Finally, after several days of searching, Terry's body was discovered behind the family home. The consensus was that Skylar had killed Terry for unknown reasons and tried to bury his body under a tree in the backyard. Skylar's mother, Shauna, was acting very strangely at the time and claimed that Terry had autism, and apparently at first she did not allow the police to investigate her property. After Terry's body was discovered, the search party was promptly called off, and a candlelit vigil was set up for Terry. In the aftermath, a lot of drama ensued. Terry's biological father came into town from the other side of the country and claimed that his ex-wife had lied about their son having autism and demanded to take his son's body back with him. He also sued Shauna for a large amount of money. I think it had something to do with child neglect or emotional distress. The two even appeared and debated on the Dr. Phil show, but nothing ever came out of it, besides what everyone already knew. Since Skylar was a minor, he was not tried as an adult and was found guilty of manslaughter. Apparently what happened was that the brothers were roughhousing, and things got out of hand. The mother would later suggest that Terry had hit his head on a table or something, and in a panic Skylar had tried to bury his brother's body. What is truly strange was that knowing what had happened, Skylar still went to Facebook to ask for help in finding his younger brother. Skylar was sentenced to 12 years and will stay in a juvenile detention center until he is 23.
Breaking news into the Press Enterprise newsroom. Skylar Adelano, the 16-year-old half-brother of Terry Dwayne Smith Jr., has been charged with murder. The boy's body was found buried in a shallow grave near the family's Menifee home early Wednesday morning.
I'm a 20-year-old male, and I run a large haunted house attraction. You pay to walk through, and we scare the lights out of you. We hold casting sessions about 3 weeks before the haunting season starts, and we always have interesting people show up. I develop a close connection with some of the actors throughout the season. A lot of haunters will tell you that this will develop a bond between people in some weird way. There was one kid that stood out to me during last year's audition. In fact, he impressed me so much that I allowed him to pick what scene he wanted to work. We never do that. We usually select the scenes that we want the actors to work. He ended up going with the butcher shop, and his performance was perfect. He scared the daylights out of the test group. We talked for about 3 hours after the test runs, and I'll never forget what he told me before leaving the makeup room. I'm just glad I found a job that allows me to act like I want to every day, minus the murder charges. We laughed about it, and I told him that I would be calling him soon. About 4 days later, I got his application out of the stack, and I was excited to call him and officially hire him. However, an old man answered the phone when I called. He went quiet when I asked him if the guy was home. After a short while, the old man asked me what I wanted with him. After I explained, the old man told me that the guy was no longer available. And naturally, I was very disappointed, because I knew this guy would have been great for the haunted house. Fast forward to December. I was randomly browsing the internet when I came across a news article on Yahoo's front page. It said, "Chilling 911 call finally released." There was a picture of someone who looked like the guy who had auditioned that year. After reading the article, I confirmed that it was the same guy. He had been arrested for shooting his mother and sister in the head. And I felt something that I had never felt before. I can't even explain it. Before clicking on the 911 call, I was expecting it to be a frantic neighbor, or maybe a family member. But no, it was him. He calmly spent 24 minutes explaining to the operator what he had done. Completely emotionless. Saying things like, I guess I'm pretty evil. Whatever. Listening to the call sent a chill up my spine. All I can say is you have to hear it for yourself. What if he had ended up working at my haunted house? Would he still have done it? Would he have killed somebody at the attraction? I think about this a lot more than I should, and I can't stand that.
Okay, is there any reason that you were so angry at your mother and your sister?
I don't know. I wasn't. It's weird. I wasn't even really angry with them. It just kind of happened. I've been kind of planning on killing for a while now.
The two of them, or just anybody?
Pretty much anybody. Just kind of really. I guess this is really selfish to say, but to me, I felt like they were just suffocating me in a way. I don't know. I think obviously, I'm pretty, I guess, evil, but that's, whatever.
Okay.